Robservations with Meyer Burnett.
But what's very interesting is the situation we have with the upcoming Eternals. Now, I've made it's not a secret that I'm deliriously excited for the Eternals. I love the Kirby stories of the Eternals and the Deviants that he wrote. And I also love when Neil Gaiman picked up and did his own version of the Eternals. It's very, very interesting. And the fact that they've decided to make an Eternals film, which they've been saying is very different than any of the other Marvel films in the Marvel Universe, has made me deliriously excited to see it. I love the cast they've picked. It's very eclectic. It's very interesting, including Angelina Jolie, obviously. And what's very interesting to me, the most interesting thing, is the director of the Eternals, Chloe Zhao. Now, for those of you who might not know her because she is not a household name, she's made 3 previous movies before the Eternals, the last one being Nomadland, which is getting all kinds of accolades and critics awards. Now it's out in cinemas. It's getting a lot of Oscar award buzz for her as a director and for Best Film and Frances McDormand's performance. And to know that we have a woman who's made 3 independent movies, that she actually has a point of view and a passion and a philosophy. When you get a film by Chloe Zhao, you truly are getting what I'm always after, authorship, as far as movies go. Now, what's very interesting is knowing that we have a giant Marvel movie coming from a director like Chloe Zhao. Now, when I first got really excited about it, this was before I really knew anything about Nomadland. There was an article back January 3rd. Well, this one's a new article, but I had heard that Chloe Zhao had been tapped to do this. But what's really interesting is this article that comes from Collider. This is from a couple weeks back. Ali Gemmel wrote this on January 30th, 2021. Kevin Feige, after a lot of this buzz about Nomadland, came out and explained what was it that made you decide to go with Chloe Zhao. And this article says, there's no time like the present to look ahead to the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4, and in particular the upcoming feature Eternals. This week we're thinking about Eternals because it seems to have been on the mind of Kevin Feige. The Marvel Studios head opened up in a recent interview about his initial reaction to director Chloe Zhao's pitch for the out-of-this-world MCU feature, and it sure sounds like a harbinger of the greatness to come. A Rolling Stone profile via IGN was published earlier this week on Zhao and her incredible year, courtesy of Nomadland. The profile also included commentary from Feige and other industry professionals remarking on Zhao, her film, and her artistic vision as a director. Where Feige is concerned, his comments centered around Zhao's work on Eternals. It was supposed to come out, now it's coming out November 2021. It was supposed to come out the end of last year, and stretched back to the moment when Zhao gave him her pitch for the movie. Without revealing specifics, a bummer I know, Feige told Rolling Stone that Zhao's Eternals pitch was the best he'd ever heard. He also shared, not only does Zhao make remarkable small personal movies in a remarkable small personal way, but she thinks in grand, cosmic, gigantic terms, which fit perfectly with what we wanted to do. Eternals is a very big, sweeping, multi-millennial spanning story, and she just got it. Now, hearing something like that, that makes me all aflutter, because that's exactly what I want. When I watch my fantasy epics, my comic book movies, Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever, what I want is I want a director that has something to say, that their movies are not just, I'm not just going to make a comic book film. No, I'm going to make a film. And while the milieu has comic book characters populating it, Chloe Zhao doesn't sound like she's the kind of person that's going to ever look down on the material. For so long, the reason comic book movies weren't working is because people thought, oh, well, they're just comic books. No, comic books are stories just like anything else. And, you know, when you're making a film, you can only get out of the story that you're making or the film that you're making what you put into it. And if suddenly you're not going to take into consideration the reality of what this could be, you end up with movies, well, not to be that disparaging, but still not a great version of that character. Or you wind up with Pitoff's Catwoman. And I really think it's important that you have a point of view. Now, obviously, Kevin Feige said that, oh, this was the best pitch I ever heard. The best pitch that, and she just got the material. It was multi-millennial. It takes place over thousands of years, and it's a generation spanning kind of a film, and he's very excited about it. So if Kevin Feige's excited about it, I'm excited about that. But I didn't really know, like, well, what does that mean exactly? What are we going to get from Chloe Zhao? What are we hoping to get? So knowing about Nomadland, which by the way I have yet to see, I've loved reading little snippets here and there about her philosophy. So what can I glean from Chloe Zhao to give me a little insight into what we can expect, or at least what we can hope to get from the Eternals film, which is, again, I cannot stress enough how excited I am to see the Eternals movie. Now, before you people all start accusing me, oh, Rob, you're such a Marvel shill lately. Look, man, they don't pay me jack. I don't get free tickets to their premieres. I don't get free hot toys. I get nothing from Marvel or Disney. They don't give me shit. And by the way, I'm not asking. All I want from them is to continue to make great works the way they do. I thoroughly enjoy. Well, you know what? If you do want to, like, hook me up with hot toys, like, that wouldn't be so bad. But look, I don't expect that. I'm still buying hot toys. You know, I got my so y'all know, I mean, look, I got my boy Thanos here. Would it have been nice for somebody to just send this to me? Well, it would have. It would have. I wouldn't have had to pay it off over time. But that's never going to happen because no one's giving away free hot toys. I think they're the only toys that you can buy that you can pretty much guarantee go up in value. But so what I just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and what I like is all the people working there are delivering the goods. They're providing us the best entertainment. But what's really interesting is an article I found on my beloved Deadline that was published today. And I wanted to share this with you because it excites me more than anything, because the potential for the kind of movie that Eternals is going to be. Now, this article, people are going to be like, well, Rob, she's not even talking about Eternals. I know, but it's what she's saying here that I found really compelling. And if this is, because this is the way I think about all movies, especially science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So anyway, this article that was, in fact, in Deadline was published by Joe Uchichi. It looks like Uchidi. Uchi, maybe? I can't pronounce Uchichi. I'm sorry, Joe. I'm massacring your name. But Nomadland director Chloe Zhao, why we need to train our minds to want less, and the problem of elder care in America. Don't worry, you'll see where I'm going with this. Chloe Zhao has made 3 feature films to date, each of them blending narrative storytelling with nonfiction. Her debut, Songs My Brothers Taught Me, told the story of a Native American siblings struggling to find their place in a changing world. The writer cast cowboy Brady Jandreau as a version of himself, reliving the true story of his near-fatal head injury. And while her new film, Nomadland, cast professional actors like Frances McDormand and David Strathairn for the first time, it rounds out its ensemble with real nomads, people who have taken to living in camper vans in what would be their retirement, forced instead to seek itinerant labor around the country to make ends meet. All 3 films deal with survival and identity, and each of them pack an emotional punch that hits with greater fervor because of the line Zhao blurs between fact and fiction. Based on Jessica Bruder's nonfiction book about the nomads and the changing face of the America they inhabit, Nomadland confirms Zhao as one of the modern cinema's most exciting new voices. Deadline says, at the Indie Spirit Awards a few years ago, you and Frances McDormand referenced one another in your speeches. How deep into this process were you at that point? Chloe Zhao says, we'd met right before that. We knew we wanted to work together and the emotions were high, so we just decided to give one another a shout-out. I'd read the book by then. What grabbed you about it? Initially, it was the world that Jessica had captured. It was a time in America where a way of life was fast disappearing, and she had captured that with her chapter on Empire, Nevada, a chapter on Quartzsite, a chapter on the Amazon warehouse. She really managed to capture a time, so the world building of her book was attractive to me. Thinking about these unique characters within that visual world, I realized I'd never really explored the world through an older person's perspective, and I felt the urgency of it too. It said a lot about a time in this country that I felt I wanted to capture before it was gone, before it's too late. And then Deadline says, that sense of a disappearing way of life is run through your work. You balance a real melancholic truth, though, with a certain sense of romance for the world you capture. It strikes me that you feel simpatico with the kind of resolve it takes for people to persevere with their way of life while the odds get stacked against them. Is that a fair assessment? Zhao says, I think so. I think it comes instinctually to all of us who want to tell stories for a living. I think there's a gut feeling toward the kind of stories that draw us. I'll pass through a small town in Nebraska that has a population of 18 people, which used to be a popular railroad town until the railroad stopped. And all I want to do is try and figure out from those people how they would want to be remembered if their town were to disappear entirely. The impulse drives me. As storytellers, we're in the business anyway of recording things, of recording time and recording people. And for me, I'm interested in those things that are about to go away, like the town of Empire. Maybe that's where the romanticism comes in, because I don't go in thinking I want to examine an issue or make a statement. I'm always trying to look through the perspective of someone who loves a place like this and this way of life. It was the same with Brady, with the horses and being a cowboy and the rider. I love that she says, just to be clear, to accentuate this, she says, I don't go in thinking I want to examine an issue or make a statement. I love it. Deadline says, your films blend narrative fiction with real people, real worlds in a fascinating way. How does the script come together when you're folding in so many of these real elements? Zhao says, at the same time, I'm trying to figure out who Fern is based on the stories in the book. We're also trying to work out which of the nomads can be in the film, who wants to be in the film, and what we'll do for the locations. Everything happens simultaneously because once we meet someone like Swanky, we realize she has to be in the film, and that informs the journey that Fern is going to take. Eventually, I drew a map of Fern's journey, which the producers could use to work on the film. The locations we'll travel to, the towns Fern will visit, so we know we want to cover almost all the landscapes in the American West. The only ones that we didn't really cover were the canyons and maybe the Rockies. Deadline says, you made 3 feature films that all explore aspects of Americana. What did America mean to you growing up in China? Zhao says, I moved to America for senior year of high school, and when I arrived, it was the pop culture, because that's what I was exposed to in China. It was music more than movies, really. It was musicians. I landed in downtown LA in 1999 with very little understanding of how America worked, and I definitely got a handful, more than I could handle, laughs. I didn't understand the relationship between people, race, identity, class, so many things. So then I dived in real hard for my senior year of high school, and for 4 years of college studying American politics. That was my focus. I came from a people that were very stationary and built a nation that only opened its doors recently because it was so very self-sustaining. I always joke that I'm a descendant of rice farmers, and in rice farming, you cultivate the land over and over in one place. And then I found myself making films about people that prefer to be hunter-gatherers or ranchers and move a lot. In America, thanks to the highway system, the society is built on movement. And I think it's just something that you don't experience when you're young that you want to try and understand. It's a curiosity. And Deadline says, as an outsider in America myself, I wonder if you feel that coming to America from a different culture gives you a particular viewpoint that allows you to examine it in a fresh way. And this is what really got me. I think it's how you make films. You can make films from inside yourself that put that out there, or go into the world and bring it to you. So out of necessity, yes, I'm coming into a community that's not my own, and you have to try harder to put yourself in their shoes and figure out, how do they see a sunset? Because how I see a sunset is very different. The choices you make in the script, in the editing, in the music, have to be informed by trying to capture an authentic, emotional truth that these people feel in these moments of their lives. And I think you're right, because it's not my own truth. Maybe just instinctually I start off with more of a reverence for understanding a person in that world, that rather than imposing myself on what a character should be. Identity fascinates me. When you look at young people in America, you see them taking up these cultural identities. A cowboy, a gang member, and especially with kids in the heartland, I think there's a fishbowl situation there that I felt when I was young as well, growing up in China. I knew what was outside, but I couldn't quite leave. So when the fishbowl is covered, that's one story. But when you lift it up, when the internet and social media move in, something happens to the younger generation where they have to define themselves beyond, I'm a coal miner's son. It's not enough anymore, and they start questioning who they are. I also think all countries around the world are becoming more nationalistic as the world shrinks. It's important to hold on to some kind of identity, especially for a young country like America. They need to feel American. America is very strong for a lot of folks. They need to feel American is. Imagine that philosophy that she espouses there. I'm coming into a community that's not my own, and you have to try harder to put yourself in their shoes and figure it out. Imagine her bringing that idea into a group of comic book characters. I mean, what I was thinking when I listened to her, read this, I was thinking, my God, she's going to approach these comic book characters in the same way she approaches different environments or different communities here. They're like an existing community. Here's how they are. Here's the stories that have been told about them. And this is what she is going to try and do. And when you're telling a story about the Eternals, you're going to try and illuminate the truths like, what is that like? What was it like to be an Eternal? To listen to her talk about what she was planning to bring and how she comes at filmmaking. I love that idea because I am sure that she, after listening to her talk, I could be wrong, but the thing that excites me, and I'm sure this is why Kevin Feige probably loved her pitch, because she probably said something similar. I want to go explore. I don't want to bring my own points of view into this. I'm going to approach the Eternals as if they're another group of people that I'm going to examine and delve into and find out what are they all about. And if she could bring that attitude into a comic book property, and the way she's gonna approach it, I'm like, no wonder Kevin Feige tapped a woman. Yeah, of course, she moved here in high school. She was an immigrant from China, but I don't think that that's why he tapped her to do this. I think he tapped her exactly because of whatever her pitch was. It was along the lines of what she's talking about here, and that's what excites me. What excites me is, and why I still get excited about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, yeah, you might have alien beings that could snap their finger and kill half the beings in the universe. But on the other hand, if you're looking at a group like the Eternals that have been around for a long time, you're dealing with a community of people that are different than anything that we all know. And I think that it's an amazing approach. And I think, once again, someone like Kevin Feige, probably the only person on planet Earth who would have hired Chloe Zhao to do a tentpole property, which, when you're talking about the 24th, this would have been, I think this is supposed to be, the 25th Marvel Cinematic Universe film after Black Widow. That might not be the case now because maybe it's Black Widow and Shang-Chi and then Eternals. I'm not really sure. I'd have to go back and look. I didn't look before this broadcast. But this is why the Marvel Cinematic Universe still excites me, because we have an exciting, dynamic director who has an interesting point of view that she's been honing over now 3 feature films. Eternals will be her 4th. And somebody who is out of the box. There's no reason, no agent, no manager. I don't know how she got there, but to get into that room with Kevin Feige. But let's just say I don't think Warner Brothers would have hired her to do this. I really don't. Again, it's the visionary nature of Kevin Feige and the decisions he's making by tapping people like Chloe Zhao. If it works, the same way it worked with James Gunn, the same way it worked with the Russo brothers, if you've got that special sauce and she's done something really extraordinary with the Eternals, I'm telling you, it makes all the difference in the world. And that's why these movies can still excite me. People are like, oh, Rob, they're just milquetoast, middle of the road. No, they're not. But anyway, I don't want to have to convince you of that. I'm going to put this interview in the live chat, and if you want, please check it out. But read it, because I think we're going to get something really special in this film. At least, I don't know. I certainly hope so. And there's been so little about it we know. And by the way, I could be wrong. I could be completely off base. Maybe it was the whole thing was an incredible disaster and Feige and team had to step in to fix it. But I doubt it.